In this video, I'll be showing you how to paint the brand new Aeldari... Guys, come on, we've spoken about this. Did you turn the cloaks off for a minute? Thanks. The brand new Eldar Rangers. Now these are sneaky little guys. There's a lot of detail, but let's get cracking. Welcome to the painting coach. Let's get started. So the first thing to do is to show you how I've got everything ready. I've left all the heads off and I've primed them with a light bone colour. As for the main body, I've primed them black and then used an airbrush to add Mephiston Red. Now if you don't have an airbrush, you can either use the can primer or you can just paint it on. And with that, let's get cracking. The first thing we want to do is make sure we can shade this armour. So we're going to do this with some Flesh Tearers Red contrast paint. Mix 2-part contrast medium to 1-part Flesh Tearers Red. And we're going to paint this over all of the red armour. When that's dry, we're going to highlight all of the armour plates, and the first colour we're going to use is Evil Sun Scarlet. We're going to apply this over all of the armour plates, leaving that Flesh Tearers Red in the recesses, and this is going to give us a nice bright base to jump from. The first edge highlight is going to be with Wild Rider Red, which is easy for you to see. And essentially what we're looking to do is catch all of the edges using the side of the brush. Now it doesn't matter if this is a little bit chunky, but we do want to keep it as tidy as possible. Finally, take some Fire Dragon Bright and use this to highlight only those sharpest edges and those sharpest corners. And we're just touching the brush onto the model here. We're not doing anything too extreme because we don't want to turn it too orangey and desaturate it. We'll jump onto the cloak next, and we're going to base this using Castellan Green, and I'm going to make sure that I paint the back of the cloak as well as the inside of the cloak. And as we add more green, we're going to keep highlighting the inside to get to a brighter green like the box art. Don't forget to paint the hoods and any face masks as well. Next up, we're going to start painting that camo pattern, and the first colour we're going to use is Straken Green, which is a little bit of a light colour and doesn't cover fantastically well, so you will need to use 2 coats, maybe 3. And essentially what we're going to do is start to draw some diamonds. Now you can do this one of 2 ways. You can add some dots into place and join them up, or you can do what I've done and just throw myself in with reckless abandon and start squiggling some lines in there. You can always have different shapes and different thickness. That's the beauty of this and the whole point of this camo pattern. For the darker pattern, we're going to use Abaddon Black. Now keep this thin so it flows nicely, and essentially we're going to do the same thing, except we're going to create slightly larger diamond shapes using the black paint. Now when you're doing this, be careful because you don't want it to go over the Straken Green, but you do want it to go under. So just take your time when you get to those areas and build up the pattern. It doesn't have to be exact. The whole point of this is that it's fuzzy and it'll make it difficult to see. While we've got the Abaddon Black out, let's base all of the weapons and also all of the belts and leather parts as well. So most of my leather is going to be black. The pack on the back will do a dark brown, but everything else will be black. So let's get that based now. Now that we've got that camouflage pattern finished, we need to get some shade onto the cloak. So the colour we'll use for this is Nuln Oil. And essentially what we want to do really is focus this into those deepest recesses. We don't want to wash the whole of the cloak. We just want to get into those folds, creases and deep areas to add some interest. Once that Nuln Oil is dry, it's time to highlight some of the green parts. So the first thing we'll do is take some Nurgling Green and we'll use this to paint all of the insides of the cloak to get that nice bright effect. We'll also use it to highlight some of the diamond shapes on the camouflage pattern, especially on those raised areas. So just take your time and make sure you've got a good point on your brush. Next up, we'll highlight the black areas, and the colour we're going to use for this is Mechanicus Standard Grey. So we're going to be covering the weapon. We're also going to be highlighting the leather, like the belts and the pouches. And of course, we're going to be highlighting some of that camo pattern on the most raised areas. So take your time with this and just work it around. If you do make any mistakes, you can always paint over it with black. The final sharp highlight we'll do on the black is with Administratum Grey. Now don't worry about using this on the camo pattern because we want that to stay slightly more muted. But on the weapons we want them to pop a little bit, so make sure you take the edge of your brush and just use the shape of the weapon and the leather pouches and belts to get a really nice sharp highlight. We'll base all of the brown leather parts next, and for that we're going to take some Dryad Bark and we're going to paint this over the leg coverings, over the gloves and over the pack on the back which holds the rifle and any other ammo compartments. The first highlight on these areas will be with Gorthor Brown, and we'll use it in 2 ways. Firstly, where we've got sharp creases, we'll just highlight those folds. And where we've got large areas, such as around knees and areas which are catching quite a lot of light, we'll just paint the whole of that area. Finally, we'll add an extreme highlight using Karak Stone. We want to use this on those sharpest raised areas as well as along the fingers to really add some prominence to those areas. We also want to use this to highlight all of the edging detail on the back pack. So take your time with this and just run the brush over so that the paint transfers across and you don't get it into any of those recesses. To tie all of that brown leather together, we'll take some Agrax Earthshade and just use this to cover all of those leather areas. Now you can just pop this on, don't let it pool too much, and just on the backpack be really careful that you don't cover that Karak Stone patterning that you've detailed on. We'll work on the gold elements next, and this is really simple. There's very little gold, but just be careful around areas you've finished. Just take some Liberator Gold and paint this over all of those areas. Now you can add it onto some of the gem shapes on the gun, but make sure we're going to focus on those outlines for all the soul gems. Next up, we'll paint those gems as well as any lenses, and the colour we'll use for this is White Scar. Now this is a funny colour, sometimes it covers really well, sometimes it doesn't, but just take your time, and if you need to use more than one coat, make sure you do. And like I said, this is all the gemstones as well as any lenses. We'll paint all of the gems and lenses using contrast paint, and we're going to use 3 colours. We're going to use Volupous Pink, Talassar Blue and Warp Lightning. Now you can use these interchangeably, but I'm just going to make sure I use Warp Lightning on the lenses. The last bit we need to do is any bare flesh areas. So the colour we're going to use for this is not a Citadel colour, it's a Vallejo game colour, and it's pale flesh. It's a fantastic light flesh colour. If you want to mix it using Citadel, you might need to use some Kislev flesh and some Shabti bone and maybe some white, but just get this down over any bare flesh. Next up, take some Reikland Fleshshade and just paint this into the recesses. There's no need to paint the whole part of bare flesh, but around the recesses and where you have any borders between masks or bandanas. When that's dry, go back to pale flesh and use this to tidy up any areas where you may have spilt Reikland or you don't want it. Finally, take a 50-50 mix of pale flesh and White Scar and use this to highlight any of the raised areas. So if you've got brows, nose, cheekbones, and it should blend in quite nicely to the colour underneath, and there you have some nice pale Aeldari flesh. And there you have it, these fantastic Aeldari Ranger sculpts are done and ready for the tabletop. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like, leave a comment, and make sure you check out my other content. It really does help the channel. I'll see you next time.